This important disclaimer in its entirety. All participants of this ThugCrowd radio episode are characters.
You know what those are?
No, there's like an explosion outside my house. Truth or reality. All works of fiction displayed during this episode that resemble real-life situations are coincidental. Tutorials to commit any crimes in any country. Please consult an attorney for local laws and regulations. And as always, trust your inner criminal.
Oh fuck, I'm gonna have to kill myself now.
Well, we are on Twitch. It's very appropriate.
Ooh.
This is not being broadcast, right?
Yes, it is.
Such quality content.
I'm a quality bean.
Welcome everybody to this quality content.
Have you heard the news about Denise?
ThugCrowd is family-friendly content.
Wait, what?
No
What about-
swearing allowed.
Fuck.
Like VeggieTales, we are a good Christian channel. We only endorse moral messages.
It's gonna be a sloppy show. This is great.
Yep. All right. Hey, everybody. Or mute all of you. All right.
Man work.
I love you. You.
Welcome everybody to another episode of ThugCrowd here on Twitch. Yeah, so we have a pretty cool show tonight. Here I'm gonna put the show notes in the chat. Check those out because there's a lot of funny news this week. I've got to say, as I was going through the news, we were talking about this before. There's a lot of just face-palmingly dumb kind of shit going on. It's awesome. We also have Uncle D 1023. I don't know how you like to pronounce it.
1023.
1023, yes. Of Technic.io to talk about his services and all the fun stuff that he has to deal with. So yeah, we should get right into the news. First thing I wanted to say was that we are doing on November 3rd, I forgot to put this in the show notes, November 3rd, we are doing a charity 24-hour long CTF and hacking challenge stream for little kids. And hold on, I gotta get that link here. So yeah, we are going to be doing that. Please challenge us. We can test our might. And
can people donate money to that?
Yep. So hold on.
Oh, look, let's hear it, girl.
Yep,
Can I
so
launder
right
my
here,
Bitcoin through that?
yeah, we're trying to figure out a Bitcoin.
We're not trying to hurt the children though, so like currency that doesn't rapidly go up and down would be preferred.
Well, we can do stuff to it to make it more stable.
Oh, we'll pump and dump it, right?
Yeah, right. No, we'll do this whole ICO. That kid's coin, sick coin. Yeah.
On that ASAP.
So yeah, definitely check that out because it's actually really cool. People do it with video games, but I figured why not do it with hacking challenges so that everybody's on it and so they can own the whole, Earth.
That is really video games for us, right?
Yeah, exactly. So all right, let's get into the news. You guys have a show notes up?
Oh yeah.
Where are the show notes?
They're in the Twitch chat and in a bunch of other places. I'll put them into the Twitch channel though, just for you.
Thank you. I love you.
Just for you, we'll
There
wait.
you go. Violent J did it, so thanks. All right. So starting off the news is something that I've been kind of wondering about a little bit, but it's also kind of like, is somebody took over the Gentoo Linux GitHub repo for a little bit.
Yo, and did you see today they got sold for how many billions? 2?
Susie. That was Susie.
Oh, I thought it was the same one. I was.
I don't know why anybody would pay for Suso, but that's a different story.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, this Gentoo GitHub repo, like pretty much everything on it is untrusted until they go through and verify, right? So that's a pretty big issue.
Right? Imagine having to verify every single little tiny kernel module.
There's got to be like a few guys that had just gotten their Gentoo box perfect. They tweaked everything. they got everything just right.
Finally
and then
done.
the news came out.
It's funny, like, I've had some, does anybody remember Gen 2 for Rices? Gen 2 is for Rices.
No.
What?
I'm gonna paste
so
this.
is Arch.
Yeah, I
so
do.
is Arch, but still.
I just pasted that link quickly. You can have a look at that in the Twitch chat. But so just on the topic of Gen 2, like I've had conversations with people where they tell me things like Gen 2 is the most secure Linux distribution because it's compiled from source and you can patch the security problems before anybody else. And my like response to that's always like, well, how do you know what to patch? Like, where are you getting this magic information from?
Now you can just say, "Suck it." Look at this.
Yeah, it's
Whole
like,
thing got owned, buddy.
yeah,
That's
like
pretty
tell
much
me.
like, Suck it.
Yeah.
That's remember when the CVS OpenBSD got backdoored by Suck It Rootkit? Suck it.
Oh man, that
That is an
reference.
excellent name, though. I love it.
Well,
This seems like it's going to have impact, right? Like first of all, does the news story go into the exact bookmarks book ends of when it started and ended?
no, it was kind of
Apparently,
vague.
there isn't a lot. I mean, because it's the downstream from the actual development tree,
Right.
so they think they caught it within a couple of hours, and that not many, if any, people actually replicated any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Unlike the Linux Mint attack, which happened a few months ago, where they popped like Mint's website and hundreds of people downloaded that ISO and installed it.
Whatever happened with any of that? So odds over under on it being the same kind of crew, or you think this is just opportunity?
Opportunistic. I think a lot of GitHub attacks are just luck, really.
I think,
For sure.
I agree.
Throw
I think it'd be
back
funny
something until it works.
I think with like this as well, like the direction of the way the code flows. I guess they didn't submit any pull requests like upstream. Like if a kernel module, for example, was backdoored, it's not going to hit. It's going to get Garrett peer reviewed and whatever before it can get into like Linux mainline. And there's going to be a whole mailing list. Yeah, there's going to be a whole mailing list thread of neckbeards whinging over like how the syntax should be and all that kind of stuff.
This is exactly correct. Yeah. What if one of theirs gets popped though, which likely has and just hasn't been used yet? I don't know. Am I blowing up somebody's spot? Sorry.
No, that's actually a good point. There's the story. So Dave Vitale has posted about it on like his on Daily Dave before about like the idea of like iHunt sysadmins to iHunt developers like being actively used by the NSA or something at one point. So if you did have push rights to certain repos, you could remove a couple of curly braces and all of a sudden you have a different code path or whatever it is. That's a real thing.
Like API abuse too, right? Like that would bypass their reviews. I mean, you got to think something like that probably exists. Like just
there's definitely been some code, like some Git front ends that so not specifically. I guess I don't know about GitHub specifically, but there's been alternatives to like that web front end where you could get RCE and modify the Git repo on the actual on the actual server, and then other people would clone it. But you have to remember as well that the whole point of having like version control like that is that there is you need hash collisions or something in order to get around it without being noticed.
What kind of hashes are they doing though? MD5 or are they doing SHA-1?
No, it's SHA. I don't think it's SHA-1. I used to know the answer to this, but
they're doing SHA something.
It's SHA or something. Yeah, it's not MD5.
Nice.
I think it's SHA-1 because there's big hoopla about the whole MD5 collision and Git and them changing all that.
Yeah.
The proof of concept POC GTFO 18 had like a SHA-1 collision.
Yeah, the whole
They had
on a PDF as well.
But it was
that was the PDF one, right?
Yeah.
And they were doing trickery too, right? Like they had CSS or something lined in there, and then it was using some offset on a detachable piece or a modular piece. I forget exactly the mechanics of it, but it looked a little sketchy when you got into how they did it. Still, they did it, I guess is the point. So
yeah, it's a bot. It's not a real world,
practical.
So.
So Violent J, we got your story over here. Just one of the best things I've seen in a while. Basically, researchers have found that Juggalo makeup is like poses a real problem to facial recognition software.
I feel like you need to find some Juggalo music and have that as a music bed for a little bit.
I don't want to get DMCA'd.
But try like a DJ mix or something.
All right,
a happy hardcore mix of them.
All right, we'll figure that out.
We'll get some great Malenko on, but yeah. So specifically with this, what the issue was that the neckline was being obfuscated as the bottom of the face paint. So this isn't all Juggalo face paint. So like a lot of Juggalos have different face paint. They do their own thing, whatever. But specifically in the case that we've seen, it's the face paint of the two members of ICP, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, where they the way that their face paint is done, it create the bottom of the black area on their face is actually detected as the neckline. A couple of things help this is that a lot of the photos used as an example, Violent J is actually pretty kind of overweight. So I guess that's one thing. And the way that they actually do the smile, the clown smile, is actually quite large. So it goes right up their cheeks as if it could like almost to the ear. So that's kind of like where this, like there's a few images that have this as an like analyzed and they show some red lines to go like these are the eyes, this is the mouth, this is whatever, but it's specifically the neckline that was really messing it up.
Yeah, it also looks like the eyebrows weren't on there completely because they paint the white over the eyebrows, so they're hard to see.
I mean, so I'm just gonna say it. It's Juggalo time for literally everybody in InfoSec. If you're not dressed up as a Juggalo at DEF CON, you just don't know what's up. Oh, I'm gonna drink.
Oh god.
I'm back.
Alrighty.
Juggalo paint though. Who would have thought? Like, so I gotta say one other thing that I've seen at DEF CON a year or two ago now, and I think it might have been somebody kind of famous that did it, but somebody had a hat and infrared LEDs that were pointing down and effectively flooding out his face. And I thought it was really cool. Never got a chance to stop and talk to him about it, but he was rocking that thing a couple of years back. I kind of wonder if that's something that needs to be revisited. And I mean, fuck facial recognition.
Isn't that bad for your eyes?
Yeah, probably. So go blind or be anonymous.
There was Snare also had a mask that he posted on Twitter like years ago now, but it was like this warped mask that there wasn't. This is this Snare with, I don't know. It was a mask that he had on that like warped out differently. I'm just gonna call Snare. I'm gonna call Snare a Juggalo just so he gets mad about it. On it.
Invite him on, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's not coming.
I always thought it would be cool to mix the two together, so that instead of having the LEDs on the hat as the primary display, have the LEDs point in at the face and project different patterns onto the face and have it rotate throughout the day, or throughout time rather, so that it's continually shifting and they can't fix on you.
Now you're getting into scramble suits. A scanner darkly.
Yes, exactly.
I gotta say that's recommended watching. By the way, for
very highly recommended watching.
Yeah, Scanner Darkly.
Especially if you're a fan of Joe Rogan or Alex Jones, they have some good cameos in that movie.
What? Joe Rogan?
Yeah, I think so. Alex Jones is absolutely in it.
What?
Alex Jones.
Okay, I'm gonna have to rewatch it.
He plays a character from the book of like a right-wing nut job, tinfoil hat guy who's telling everybody about the total surveillance system.
He's really
exactly what Alex Jones
does.
Oh,
he's the guy that gets kidnapped. Oh yeah, okay, all right.
I like the part how Robert Downey Jr. just like kind of plays a poor version of himself.
At the time, it may have been just an accurate portrayal.
I think it was accurate portrayal. That's just actually Robert Downey Jr. who didn't even have a script; they just filmed him.
Yeah. That movie ruled in so many ways, so you should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it.
Hell yeah. Whoop, whoop.
Hey, what about them Samsung phones?
Yeah, so the Samsung phones, I heard some of this, I think, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? This is so fucking funny. That apparently Samsung phones are spontaneously texting users' photos to random contacts without their permission. Apparently, it affects mainly the Samsung Galaxy S9 and 9 Plus, but there could be others that are affected by it. And their messaging app is just sending random photos to people.
That's fantastic.
Way
worse than the
a
Amazon
lot of
thing.
awkward situations.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I said I bet this made for a lot of awkward situations.
Right? Because this person apparently they had only been sending stuff to like one person, and then somebody else got pictures from them, and it's just like that's like a really weird way to figure it out. If you're like trying to like keep it secret, you have your secret like side phone, and then somehow it texts like Domino's, and it's really your side guy.
I would definitely say like this is a good example of like why you shouldn't take nudes. Like I mean, a lot of some people don't mind, but if you're gonna take nudes on a device that's gonna potentially randomly, like you couldn't have foreseen this coming, right? This is kind of not like a thing that you could. Well, my phone's gonna accidentally send some photos to the wrong people, like
It sucks that we live in that kind of reality now. Where that's just a possibility.
If you're using a camera for that purpose, why would you want it to be internet attached?
That's very true.
Right.
But it's just it's interesting to see if it like this is a class of bug in general. Like what could possibly be the cause of this?
Samsung.
Yeah, but you think you think about it's the new messaging protocol.
I think there's more to it than we're hearing. We're just hearing preliminary stuff, right? Like
Let's just be honest here.
Samsung is sketchy.
Yeah.
I think Samsung's just trying to be a douchebag and just leaking everyone's nudes. That's
It's always been sketchy though.
Well, who the hell is that? Oh, it's debugging. What's up?
Sorry.
Yeah, they have kind of been sketchy, but I can't imagine that their plan for Q4 was, hey, let's just send everybody's nudes, and then went by the board.
Their track history on Android, I think it was Faith that originally showed this to me, where there was like a userland read-write copy of KMM, like available on Galaxy like S3s maybe from memory. Like that's not a very good track record for like secure systems or.
I mean, their phones also did blow up for a pretty long amount of time.
They were allowed on planes.
They did.
Yeah. Like their dishwashers and shit. Just everything was blowing up. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, I've done some work over there, and it seems like their quality control and just work ethics are just so overblown with time crunch that they just make simple mistakes, and that just leads to these issues they have.
But they set the bomb to false. They set it to true. Make phone true.
But if we just quickly step back and have a look at supply chain for Android, which I don't know, I've mentioned this like a billion times. So I always, every time Android comes up, I mention supply chain of Android. But there's a messaging app from Google, right? Like, and the same, you got iMessage from Apple and whatever. But again, Samsung have taken it upon themselves to write their own messaging app. Why? Like, why not use the one that works? It doesn't send your nudes to people.
So I mean,
they always do that. They have Samsung Calendar, Samsung Organizer, Samsung. It's just bloatware stuff.
Freaking Bixby.
Sucked at it.
How are you going to steal people's information if they're not using your app?
Yeah. As mitigations, though, I think we should mention that anybody who is using a Samsung phone or is using any type of like shitty Android to look at options like Lineage OS or Copperhead OS, stuff like that, that are sort of like a bit more community vetted with open source type stuff that will run on most devices as well, so that you don't have to be stuck with that ROM that is filthy. You can be stuck with a different filthy ROM.
Or you can just stop being a thought.
Basically, you're like, they should get an alternative for their like base ROM.
Holy shit!
Or, like, what the game with.
All right, you got to move out from under the stairs so he can actually hear you.
I don't know who that was.
I might know.
Yes.
For everybody else,
volume's really low, by the way.
You gotta get out of
I'm trying to make it like calibrated correctly. Or no, it's the voice actor, right?
The
I think
tune.
I think not Dan was onto something. I think everybody else who does not have a Samsung phone, now is the time to pretend you have one.
Yeah. So yeah, totally.
I didn't mean to be sorry. I have a Samsung. Sorry, I didn't mean to send you all that racist stuff.
Whoa, I didn't say that.
So the really funny one I've been wanting to talk about. Have you guys seen the one about the Wi-Fi kiosks in New York City?
Oh, brilliant.
So this is so sick. Apparently they're going to be disabling browsers on these Wi-Fi kiosks that for some reason had browsers on them that people could go up to because people were camping out and like doing weird. There's like the photo in Time in the New York Times here. It's like a man sang and danced to a song by Slipknot playing on the Wi-Fi kiosk. Like that's very, very New York. But at the same time, it's like you're just enabling these people. Like you used to have to bring your own shit to do that in public, but now it's just there, and you can go on YouTube and listen to like the psychosocial Justin Bieber like mashup, like in public, wicked loud.
I have a hypothesis about this. The Pop Goes the Weasel music, and I think it's calling out, or they're calling into it via the phones, via pots, right?
Yeah, they're calling in.
Yeah.
It's up for 10 minutes.
I think we need to find the exchange and fucking bomb the entire like whatever area.
Wait, hold on. So this is, I think, is this the same thing as the one with the Wi-Fi kiosk that people have been like getting in, like they're taking the browser off of it? I remember there was the other thing that was a Wi-Fi something in New York, but I'm not sure if it's the same thing as this.
So just with taking the browser off the Wi-Fi kiosk, it's an Android thing, right?
Yeah, it's not gonna do shit.
Right. So, like, if we look at other examples, like the Switch was shipped without a browser, and it's obviously got the ability to access the walled garden logins, right? So there is a browser still there. There's just no browser.app to click on. So,
Yeah, and how often are they?
How long is it going to take?
How often are they updating these versions of Android too? Like, there's clearly exploits that are probably out by now.
Right. Yeah.
Or you just click on stuff and open up settings and re-enable it.
Yep.
Yeah, we actually used to have there was a thing in Federation Square in Melbourne where you could go and they had these kiosks that it was like a full screen flash application, and there was this Skype button on it. You could press Skype and you could dial someone from Skype. It had a webcam attached, and you could be like, "Hey, I'm calling you from like this landmark or whatever." And before it got vandalized to hell and destroyed, when you hit the Skype button, it actually used like a Safari link, and then Safari opened Skype. So for a moment you had desktop access, and at that point you could just do whatever. But like you could add that Skype contact as a contact and then dial in and just like randomly speak to people.
I bet it's something almost exactly like that. I swear. I bet it is.
Did you guys just let the drug dealers use those in peace?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What else would they use?
So
that's like a great idea. MG, you're on it.
One of the things
MG's doing it.
I think it's really that they're using this to try to replace like the phone booths and like make something out of the existing infrastructure that's connected to telecommunications lines. And so I think it's funny though that they're literally it's like the quotes from like people who are officials in New York City saying these kiosks are often monopolized by individuals creating personal spaces for themselves, engaging in activities including playing loud, explicit music, consuming drugs and alcohol, and the viewing of pornography.
I mean, they sound lit. They sound awesome.
It's just funny.
It sounds great.
It devolved into just what you would already imagine it to become. Just became the worst case scenario. Very
what do you expect when you put a browser out in the open?
Right?
I think as well.
Get people looking up like pornography and stuff. I mean, what were they really expecting if like you're going to put that out there? I mean, you can disable the browser, but people are obviously going to find a way around that if it's not super secure.
So, with this as well, though, like you got to think, all right, so this is a specific Wi-Fi kiosk meant for this kind of thing. But what about all the ones, all the terminals that are out there that aren't meant for this, like the point of sale things? Like I know that Hermit is the queen of. you know, like there's ATMs and stuff that have browsers. There's like all different kinds of stuff that's hidden. How long before it goes from like the average Wi-Fi kiosk before people like blasting Slipknot out of an ATM and shooting up right next to it, right?
I put a call out for anybody in New York City. It's a little late in New York, so we might not get any hits, but I would love for somebody to come on that has even an inkling about it. There's got to be a contractor or somebody out there. But I know at the very least, there's a few resources for like getting firmware and stuff for these things. So who knows? There might be fun projects in this somewhere down the road.
Sure thing.
It's a responsible disclosure, of course.
Yeah, these machines can't be that secure. Just you think the city's paying for all these machines getting updated constantly? Like you said before, exploits have to be coming out for them.
It would be nice to have like a DEF CON village of all the different types of kiosks, but I wouldn't go there because people there don't shower, so whatever.
Debug.
We can weaponize the exploits.
Yeah.
Is there a way to eliminate the echo and just keep like the low pitch?
I'm not sure. What do you use to hide yours?
The third knob over, turn it down.
I can't say it right now. I'm sorry.
Is that Destro?
Debug is good now, I think. Debug, say something racist.
I'd rather not.
All right, that's fine.
Blame it on your Samsung.
Right.
Hey, my Samsung.
Samsung left you a really violent voicemail. So speaking of threats hiding, lurking in the shadows, the 0-day exploits that were found in a PDF that was uploaded to VirusTotal. Did you guys read about this one? Because this is, I didn't fully dive into what it actually was, but this seemed really cool.
Just stupidity from an OPSEC point of view of a bad guy. Like, how you're going to keep using VirusTotal in 2018, your shit's going to get jacked. That's all it's going to happen.
Yeah. Like, definitely, I know that there's people that do VX research, like individuals, not companies, who have like APIs to VxTotal that, you know, they get the sample, they get samples en masse.
Yeah, the cat's pretty much out of the bag, right? So if you submit something to VT, it is replicated and given to tons of people and firms. It's given away.
Yeah, it's burning bugs, and I guess it follows the whole anti-sec, you know, giving away bugs for free, but you're just doing it by accident.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was working on AV bypass stuff, and I would regularly upload stuff to VirusTotal to test whether my payloads were getting detected. And I would brag about it when I'd get like 0 for 55 or whatever from VirusTotal. And then the author of this module that I was working on in Metasploit contacted me to ask me to specifically not to do this anymore because his samples were getting flagged. We were popping shells on Kaspersky and McAfee, like their sandbox scanners were connecting back to my shell, and I was like logged in as something.internal.mcafee.com. So after getting flagged, like my IP address of the VPS I was using got added to some kind of suspicious actor database, and any sample I submitted from that IP was getting flagged, and so I stopped using VirusTotal altogether.
Funny
I
thing.
hate VirusTotal, but yeah, that's another thing.
Somebody was doing our IRC from one of those for the longest time. They were fucking connecting from a sandbox to the IRC. I thought that was pretty funny.
Someone should join our IRC from like kasperskyscan.bot.com.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There was a bug a while ago. Oh man, I've totally lost what I was saying. I'm sorry.
You will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the other engines that you guys have? There are other engines out there that specifically are for bad boys to submit viruses to get like 10 scanners, and they claim that they don't submit samples anywhere.
So here's the thing. I have a really strong view on that too. Is the latest one or the best one got taken down pretty heavily, and I think the guy's probably looking at jail, right?
Why, for enabling criminals or for being part of a conspiracy?
The one whoever was running that darknet onion that basically did the exact same thing as VT, except for it was marketed towards criminals specifically. And so he obviously got fucking owned, and he's facing charges in whatever country. But my whole thing to that is, can you just maybe not market it to criminals, and then you're not going to have a fucking issue? Like, that's seriously his only problem, is intent.
Virus Total flew under the radar. All the things that work like Virus Total flew under the radar because there was like a gentleman's agreement between virus researchers, AV bypassing guys, and AV researchers, which is it's not shit where we eat here.
Instead of Shaggy J's virus uploader in leak speak or whatever the fuck.
So, like, I can see what you're talking about. NoDistribute.com is a newer one that scans with multiple AV engines, and they claim they won't distribute your sample.
But as long as it's just
how would you do this
privacy,
yourself? Like,
what's wrong with
rather
that?
than handing over a sample to someone else and having it out of your control?
I think you just
how
don't.
would you do this yourself in house? Like, how would you guys do this yourself? Would you go and purchase a bunch of licenses for actual AV products and write your own tools, or would you pirate them, or would you use some kind of API to submit samples to lots of different engines without really handing it over?
If I was doing this seriously, I'd probably purchase the licenses and just set it all up.
Yeah, you want to be as legit as possible, but that doesn't mean that you have to placate to any side at all, other than you're just curious what's happening, and you alone will see what's uploaded. Like, that's all it takes.
Yes. For a targeted attack, like a red team scenario, you would probably scope out what endpoint security solution they're using, and then get your hands on that specifically. And as long as you're bypassing Symantec or CAS or ATP, whatever they're using, you'd target it for that specific AV.
So I remember what I was gonna bring up before, and that is, like, we're talking about bypassing here, but I remember that I think it was you linked a sample that was like a hello world, and it got flagged by like shitloads of, it was like hello world.c. It's like virus, critical, like,
Yeah.
That was huge. That was like almost every single one lit up after that.
Yeah, that was crazy. It's like I really have trust in this product now.
Some of the AV signatures from like the 80s and stuff are literally just strings, like eight characters in this particular order equals this virus every time.
Well, it's like
heuristics.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to JPanic for his old school 16-bit, totally small ass work. But the thing is that there is that little code that actually executes that specific virus that when you create a signature for that, it's going to be really easy to get collisions.
No, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 100 and something bytes, maybe less.
I don't know. Yo.
So when you guys are trying to encode your Meterpreter payload for your Eternal Blue exploit, what encoders do you use, and then how do you test AV detection on coolhack.exe?
Hello, fellow chatter. I don't do those types of things.
I mean,
someone who isn't Swim, that guy Swim, who does all the things, all the drugs and stuff.
Swim.
Yeah,
someone who isn't me. Yeah,
it hasn't been in a while.
I think
he really gets around.
Swim is well advised to keep things fresh and different at all times.
Well,
Swim just uses a lot of sleeps and a bunch of padding from dev random, and that seems to bypass everything. So
Jesus Christ, that's it.
If you recall, last week we talked about the watering hole attack, where the payloads were just like straight out of Metasploit, like, and then that OLE bug that was like 17 years old. So, lol. I mean, I guess if you're going to encode stuff and get around whatever virus scanners, I just guess you just use Metasploit if you're doing your internal red team shit, unless you have time and whatever. I don't know.
We always make jokes about using Py2xe to convert our 0xe scripts into XE. But you could just take like the NSA's approach and use a obscure language like Lua and bundle a whole interpreter into your payload. Have like a 30 megabyte payload with a full Lua interpreter. That's how the Flame malware worked.
Oh yeah,
that's why it went
Really?
undetected for years. Just distribute an entire interpreter with your payload. It's fine.
Yo,
You
the
get whitelisted.
fucking. I'm just thinking back to all that wreckage that happened when that got released, and one of the biggest things that got wrecked was Maersk or Merrick, whoever that shipping company is, right? And so you got to assume for sure they had eyes and ears inside that network, inside out, and that's the shipping of the entire planet happening right there, all for them to see.
Row your boat.
Yeah.
So where is the best place? Where is the best place to get pirated antivirus from?
I mean, how many racks do you want?
So,
like Russian BitTorrent trackers, or
yeah, just talk to Aspect in the chat right now.
I thought the best, that's the best place to get APTs, but I don't know about you.
DDoS kids in the chat.
Anyways,
that's. I was gonna say torrents would be the best place to find viruses with UAVs. And it's all outdated too. That's the shitty part. There's nothing that really registers anymore. There used to be.
All right, so we'll see.
Yeah, the next. Let's get on to the next topic real quick because we can go real deep down this rabbit hole. So, so the next one was Comcast fixes. Basically, like Xfinity did more data leaking, which they did this thing before where it was last month. If you had like an account number and someone's like house number, basically, like you could like their address, you could obtain the full. No, you need just the account number and the house number, and you can get the full address with Wi-Fi name and password. And then now there's another part of their API that leaked like more data, like similar data from the Xfinity website. So anybody who was connected to an Xfinity Wi-Fi network would be able to do this.
Absolutely.
So wait. So as an Australian, explain Comcast's Xfinity product?
So Comcast is an ISP cable provider. Xfinity is like a service of theirs, right? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I don't have Xfinity personally, but there's these things like called Xfinity Wi-Fi, and if you have an Xfinity account, you can basically go onto like this like sectioned off version of a lot of like Wi-Fi on people's networks and log in with your account credentials. So pretty much if you could get onto a Xfinity Wi-Fi network, you could leverage this because you'd be connected to their network.
Right. Basically like VLAN away. But the thing is that Comcast distributes their modem router combo automatically like sends out this like free Wi-Fi hotspot from every single person's like router who has it. So that's part of like their like kind of selling point, I guess.
I feel that's kind of just log into your account from someone else's house. Now we have a list of people that you're like friends enough with to be at there, or not friends enough, but like you've been at this location at this time. Like there's extra metadata around that, right?
Yeah.
But credential leaking, that's pretty dirty.
Yeah, that's like they're storing. Like I don't even know why they would have that available for any reason to anybody.
So like from experience working with some telcos that I won't name, there was a case where we had a whole like many pallets of routers that needed to be rebranded and resold out to a different telco, and during the process, part of the configuration was we also had to set the Wi-Fi password, which matched a sticker on the actual device itself, so that when the customer got it, they could read off the back what the thing is. I'm sure you're familiar with the stickers on the back of a router. Obviously, anyone out there who hasn't changed it from that, whatever's on the sticker, go and change it. But this literally came through in a CSV. It was never put in an API. There was never any internet-facing type stuff. But if you had your hands on that CSV, every single router that was sold had like the SSID and the plain text password, because that's how the provisioning process needed to work.
Yeah.
So did we learn anything?
Yeah, just go after the CSV. I mean, what?
Buy and run your own shit.
Build your own router with a Raspberry Pi. So the next one that was I was trying to pick one that I would call the leak of the week, but since we have two of them, we have 2 leaks of the week. And so marketing firm Exactus leaked a personal info database with 340 million records. This is it's literally like one of the people who are just the shady weirdos that are just collecting a bunch of shit about you to sell to other advertisers. These people had an Elasticsearch server, I believe, open. And people were able to just pull shit off of it. And yeah, so this is like this is a bigger data leak than like I think Equifax.
This is cool because the Elasticsearch is inferior. So like, if you just empty it once you've dumped it, then you get the newest data again. That's sweet.
Yeah.
You just keep getting updates.
It's amazing.
What a great design.
Yeah, I just feel like the more that there's these like aggregations of data sources, the more we're gonna just see crazier and crazier stuff like this.
Oh yeah.
I think as well, like Elasticsearch, like the Elk Stack, Elastic Logstash, Kibana, all that stuff, the way that it's deployed right now, it's become a lot more mature in the last few years. They've branded it under a single branding. It's getting used a lot in SEAM and stuff like that as well, not just for like things like this. And it's still not really being deployed. Like it's still being deployed by people who are pretty new to it. And I guess we could look at like when Memcache was being deployed, for example, like people weren't binding it to localhost or a specific interface. It was going straight on the onto the internet. And when they were matching it up with like SQL or whatever, which is I guess what they're doing now with a cached version of whatever database tables, like you could literally just scan for like Memcache and then be like, hey, look at all the things, and it's the exact same pattern that we've seen. That would have been over 10 years ago. So it's the same thing, but at a bigger scale, plus the cloud, plus PII. This is pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that you could always count on someone to not configure their shit right. Like, it's always going to be this way, and it's more of these things get on the internet. Like, this is going to happen more and more.
So what's so bad about this this leak is the nature of the info in the database, because like anyone who's had a job has their social security number out there in a bunch of databases, or your address or PO box or whatever. But this was like whether or not you smoke, what religion you are, if you have cats and dogs. Like this is actually info that I'm more concerned about than having some random person with my social who maybe is gonna, I don't know, try to collect my tax return. This is worse.
No doubt.
As well as advertising kind of data.
It just seems like the kind of data that can be used against someone in a more personal way than just identity theft, and that's why that's what's so bad about this leak.
Yeah, definitely. Like if you could find something in there that was, I mean, not Dan, you've touched on this a lot previously about if somebody knows a secret about you, being able to hold that over you and like that kind of thing. So
yeah, I mean, it comes down to like embarrassment and the things that you're embarrassed about, the things that you're ashamed of, all that stuff is ammo against you. And if you're unprepared to deal with law enforcement, be prepared to deal with yourself, because they will turn a mirror to you and then make it a nightmare. So it's not fun. Not fun at all.
actually have a friend who got hit, and it was like it was someone had his info and like information about him, and then like that he had a girlfriend and all this stuff, and so he basically just got like nailed by like talking to this like fake chick online on Skype, and you know, doing some stuff with them, and then they're like, hey, you have 12 hours to Western Union us like $500, or else we're going to send this to your girlfriend. This is their email address, right? It's like, well, it's some that's that shit.
Good old-fashioned extortion.
What happened at the end? You skipped it. Did she leave him?
No, he was just like, I don't have $500. I'm like, okay, $300.
He started bargaining.
Yeah.
Can somebody ransom some random people in this room? Fucking force back.
No, that sounds like a crime. That would, if somebody could imaginary ransom, please.
Yes, ransom for hugs. You get 3 hugs and you get it for free.
So, what's up?
I'll get with my interpreter. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So the last one that we have in our news segment is just awesome. It's something that we were talking about a while back about they had the audio firewall, which was for a couple of different, there was a Google Nearby and a couple other protocols that would basically transmit data and commands over super high frequency to your phone. But now there's this patent that I guess was put out or applied for by Facebook that wants to hide, you know, inaudible messages and TV ads so that they can force your phone to record ambient audio to be able to tell, basically to track what like the engagement of like a real world ad is. So it would trigger your phone to record and say, oh, they're in like a room, or oh, there's like 5 people with them. We can discern by the, you know, some weird metric that they probably have like made perfect by listening to people turn through like other beans. Yeah, do you guys see this?
Yeah, I heard about that. It's pretty creepy.
Yeah, I think yeah, like we did talk about the firewall type stuff before, and a lot of it was I guess we were speculating a lot, but I guess there's a lot less speculation when stuff like this comes out.
But they filed the patent 2 weeks after that show.
Yeah, that's where they got it from. The sons of bitches.
Hold up. Somebody filed a patent after some shit we were talking about?
No. Facebook did it because they were already going to do it, and we had just noticed it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that their lawyers are probably working on that patent for a while.
Yeah, it takes a bit till it shows up.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. Like I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of digital advertising for Facebook about how they are not friends of fake news, how they're not friends of data sharing. And this is like digital signage that's appeared over the city that I've noticed like in the last couple of weeks. It's probably been there for longer, but I've only just noticed it. And walking around, there's all these like Facebook ads that are trying to like, you know, cover them up. And then this comes out where it's like, oh yeah, we're not fans of data sharing, but we're just going to make your phone like listen to stuff from your TV without you being able to hear it.
Yeah, I don't see how they could process the data locally on the device either to fingerprint ambient noise, because there's just no way that you can like hash that on a phone to say, oh, this is someone in their bathroom.
Yeah, you'd have to. I mean, they're probably feeding all this through some back channel or whatever. So,
what was the goal of it? I mean, are they picking up specific commercials with like a carrier signal, or what?
Yeah, so the specific commercial would have an out of band, like from human hearing, pitch, like tone that would then trigger the device, which is obviously within its range.
Okay.
To either begin recording and start that way.
That wouldn't be too hard to pick up because you're probably just looking for a very specific set of frequencies that don't naturally exist.
Yeah, if you had a microphone that could pick it up and you put it through, you know, spectrum analyzer or whatever, like
Yeah.
There's a Google Nearby API is probably the more mainstream one of this, but there's also a company called Listener, LASNR, which is a startup half funded by Jay-Z, interestingly enough. And this is where it becomes interesting on the ultrasonic side of things, because he's got the Tidal stuff, right? So Facebook can do stuff like detect whether you're listening to a Tidal song in the background and trigger some kind of event, like maybe Jay-Z wants to know who's listening to his music without paying for it.
Well, guess what? Nobody uses Tidal. Sucked in, Jay-Z.
Yeah, I mean, this. I think the idea is that this would replace the sort of set-top boxes that are used or have been used historically to get ratings for television shows. They just record what a family is. They just take a sample and
like
see
Nielsen.
what people are into. What are those called?
Nielsen.
Shout out to Chronic D in the chat for bringing up that Cisco Spark the smartboard stuff pairs phones using the high frequency stuff as well, which is interesting. So Cisco, another big mob, same technology.
Yeah, I don't know what it seems like a kind of a dumb way to do things when we've got a lot of other radio waves flying around and we've all got devices on us that can transmit Bluetooth, BLE, Wi-Fi.
Plug in an Ubertooth and open Wireshark and just watch how much garbage there is around you, no matter where you are. There's just
This is why it makes me suspicious. Why it makes me suspicious that they're actually focusing on the audible spectrum of the waves where human speech occurs. Why are they focusing on that when there's so much better carriers of data out there, even for beaconing and whatever?
I think one of the primary drivers is that you don't need a smart device for this to work. You could have a really shitty TV, and as long as the speaker can emit that pitch, then you're good. Like you don't need. There's no sort of like, if you had a smartphone. If we're talking about playing music or something on a smartphone has all kinds of different emitters and whatnot. Even the system bus radio stuff we've talked about before, where emissions from motherboards and things like that. But like with a TV, people have old people have TVs and a smartphone. They might not know how to use it.
So the smartphone is picking it up, right? That's the microphone, effectively.
Yeah. Right.
So there's something I think it was called Silver Push a few years back. They were already doing this. They would detect what commercials or something you're watching on TV, and your smartphone would then pick it up. And I think somebody went going through the Android App Store and found several apps that had this Silver Push technology built into it. So it was already happening, and quite a few apps had it. Might be a fun thing to dig into later.
So with audio waves, though, I guess this is a question for Pike. Pike, you there?
Right here. I didn't see him.
He's in the thing. I don't know if he's. Yeah,
He
I don't
was
know
in
if
here a
he's
minute
there.
ago.
I was just wondering, using audio waves, how different is the modulation back to data? Like, is it pretty close? Like, does anybody know that?
Back to what exactly is the question?
So, you've got your audio wave as you've got your radio wave. So, what then is it the same sort of modulation, demodulation, or are we talking like slow mode dial-up speeds, or like how much stuff can we get? Like, what kind of bandwidth could we expect to see? Maybe, I don't know. That's a pretty hard question.
Oh yeah, definitely in terms of throughput on that. But going back to like DTMS shit. I think at least in context of this, these are very simple IDs of maybe the commercial, so you need very low throughput. But I forget what it tops out at when you're doing single or dual tone high frequency stuff. That's definitely not within my scope.
Looks like we got spec here too. 4 spec from the Apopis squad. Am I saying that correct?
What the
Oh, he just went away. I guess I didn't say it right. Anyways, so Comcast was doing that, right? Just to get back to it for a second, Comcast was fixing that data leak. At the same time, did they not have a major outage across all of May East? Like, I seem to remember them having
level 3.
Yeah, huge outage.
So it was supposedly some like fiber cut, they said, but I don't know.
By some old lady, nonetheless, right? Like it was just some rando fucking in-person player, or in-person sprite, or I forget the fucking term, but
NPC,
yeah, the NPC, the goddamn NPC ran over it and fucked it up for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's all it was. It was just a fiber cut. And was that the one I saw in the sky? Like it looked like a ribbon almost.
What?
I saw some pictures that purported to be this thing, and I have a feeling they were nothing. But it's amazing what one person can do. What one like really just bumbling idiot can do to the entire internet. Imagine somebody like targeted, you know?
Yeah, that happened. I used to live in a small town, and like the entire city's infrastructure was just like one fiber line in and out, and someone basically just like hit it with a rototiller, and like hospital communication, all cell communication went down for like the entire like valley area. It was just like all because someone with a fucking like rototiller just didn't know like that they were on land with a fiber line going through it.
Didn't like one of the Atlantic lines get like attacked by a shark or something?
Yes, I think that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe officially.
But I guess I don't know if anyone wants to talk on like submarines doing like leakage out of undersea fiber cables and stuff. Like that's a thing, right? I mean, I don't personally know about it.
No, they've got submarines that I think there's like I don't know if it's called like a dry dock or whatever, but there's an entire underbelly that you see the pool below you, even though you're down below, and it's meant for pulling up the cables and doing splice work on them. It's pretty cool, but I can't talk too much more on that because I don't know much more.
We can't talk too much more about that. People who work in submarines are known as spooks, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we can only assume that if an undersea cable is there and it's carrying data, and there's a way to get to it, somebody with a submarine can probably, let's just speculate on that.
I wonder then how easy it is for those submarines, because like Microsoft just put that data center on some ocean somewhere. So I wonder how easy it is for the submarine to get access to that.
Well, there was Sealand, which was where Pirate Bay, I think, was hosted for a while, which is an oil rig that was off the shore of the British Virgin Islands, maybe, and that had a data center that was being used to host some, things.
Oh, I remember. I know about this.
Yeah, have you seen their way they're planning on putting data centers under the ocean now? So that's becoming a thing I want to do.
They did the desert. It's not like Utah.
Shell's opening Christmas presents right now.
Hey, so we've been doing the news for a little bit. It's actually 10:30 now here. Maybe we should get into our interview with Uncle D.
Yeah,
Hi.
sure.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
Glad to have you on here. We've been waiting to talk about just the ins and outs of all the stuff that you do. So hold on one second. I'm actually change the little banner here on our Twitch stream. So yeah, basically, do you want to tell us about what your service is and what you do?
Sure. So initially, I'll just go over a little bit of the history of it. Initially, it came about as just a method for the Geotechnology IRC channel on Ryzon, just to host a bunch of services that we all could use. Initially, it was just like a mumble chat and simple Git repo, things like that. Eventually, it grew a little more than that, and I started hosting content for Rice, which did a lot of ricing. So a lot of images, things like that. And all this was hosted on my personal server in my studio apartment, which was very loud. And then eventually grew up a little more, started being used by people not on IRC. And so I eventually bought a dedicated server with FlokiNet over in Romania. I don't know if you've heard of Cock Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got the recommendation from him, BC. And so they worked out pretty well. But recently moved over to LeaseWeb because it's a little cheaper and a little faster speeds, but not directly in the middle of bumfuck Germany. But yeah, so currently we have anywhere from we have about 8,000 registered users and around 10 to 15,000 hits per month. No, per day. Sorry. And we have Git repositories, unlimited, public, and private, and we have upload services, paste services. Around the upload services, you can either have client-side encryption, which obviously does it through the browser, through a JavaScript web worker, or on the back end, it just encrypts it on the server side, but it stores the key in the database.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so initially when it first came up, all the files were just uploaded raw and stored raw. But I wanted a little more of separation of concern so that if anyone got access to the server, none of the uploads would be directly accessible. So right now, if you just upload normally without utilizing the end-to-end encryption, they need both access to the database and the file system as well to be able to access those files. That also lets me kind of skirt the law, I guess. So I don't necessarily host any of the content once I accidentally remove the database. All of it is forever encrypted. And then along with that, we also have blogs, just some normal random stuff. We have a Mumble server still. And one of the things that has been interesting lately is that we've been dealing a lot with malware and malware scanners blocking access to our site.
Yeah.
Especially one of the big people we have issues with is Malwarebytes. They seem to have it out for us to not necessarily realize that we're doing the best we can on checking for malware on upload, as well as periodically scanning through the entire system. But they always, and then it's also funny because they point back to VirusTotal and they say, oh, hey, it's marked as malware on VirusTotal. But then I'm like, it's marked on VirusTotal because you guys marked it that. And so it's just a round robin of this fuckery.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So now that's actually something that I was interested in learning a bit more about, because so you have pay services and you have all sorts of different upload stuff, and like we've heard a lot about different laws and things that are coming into place in other countries where there are like the regulations for basically people being responsible for the content that comes onto the site. Now, what are some of the, I guess, like challenges, both like legal and I guess like organizational that you have with this kind of content being uploaded to your site, or things being flagged as that content, going forward?
Yeah. So the recent it's not law yet, but the lawyers for the EU have recently allowed Parliament to vote on the new laws that basically make content hosting services do some sort of either manual or automative processing of all user content. It basically removes any sort of safe harbor laws in the EU, which is ridiculous. And along with that, they also have any links that you link to other content providers. You now have to get permission from them to link to them, including like Time Magazine. If you have a link to Time Magazine in your blog article and you give like a little synopsis or whatever, with this new EU law that could pass, you would have to get permission from them. And usually that requires some sort of monetary agreement.
Huh.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm personally thinking about is obviously getting out of the EU, moving servers out. So that's a whole different project. And the way that law is specifically outlined is it's very vague in what measures you need to take to monitor and kind of scan the content that people are uploading. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to make it so not only it allows it's kind of it's a soft line between user availability to the services, but also protection of my services and myself. And so for everyone, it would be best if I just open up the floodgates and let everyone upload whatever they want, however much they want. That's the best case scenario for the end user.
Yeah.
But that's basically the worst case for me, because then everything is on me. But on the flip side, if I lock down everything, then I have to manually allow uploads. And that's the worst case for users. Best case for me, because then I'm following all the laws. I'm vetting every single piece of content that I am hosting. So it's trying to figure out the best way to kind of hit right in the middle of that, so that the users are not impacted as much by this new law or new laws, as well as I'm not as impacted as well.
Yeah.
So have you thought of other options than just keeping it business as usual? Because I apologize if you covered a little bit of this. I was out of the room for a quick second, but it has the option come up of saying, yep, we're closing, but here's another service that's behind an onion that runs just as good, has all the same options, and I don't know who runs it, some guy. And then not having to like deal with any of that stuff.
Yeah, that does come across my mind, but at this point, I hate link rot. So that's one of the things I hate. And right now I have there's 200,000 upload links out in the wild right now. And to just shut down the service and have all those just disappear, as well as GitHub repositories, everything, because everyone just embeds the links into any content that they provide. And so removing access to that, I'm trying to avoid as best as possible.
Have you thought like using a United States broker to say, hey, I own these holdings now. I own the DNS for this, and I don't really care about GDPR. So I will continue to forward these and do what I need to keep these alive on the old system.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Let me know in DMs after. I'm all about it. I think GDPR is great on the surface. It offers the ability to be forgotten. It offers all these really kind of cool things. But for a smaller type firm that isn't mature enough to have, first of all, legal counsel, let alone really an idea of how to comply, it's a nightmare that potentially gets you in legal trouble. And so I think at the beginnings of this, it's kind of going to be Wild West.
Exactly. Luckily for my service, GDPR doesn't really hit us that much because we try to get as little personal information from you as possible. I think the only personal information that could be considered by GDRP is your recovery email address, and that's not required at all. So far we have not had any requests regarding GDPR. But
Uncle, have you looked into distributing the storage? I'm one of those blockchain guys, so I always think this way. But have you considered like a Seacoin or a storage or any other kind of distributed hosting file storage system that can't really be shut down, that's powered by the magic of blockchain?
Like Waste or something, I guess, is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Postcoin, that's the
So there's this group that contacted me a while ago that was creating their own distributed file system, whatever, and they wanted to incorporate Technic into that. So that was interesting. Never heard back from them. I think they disappeared, like most of them do. But yeah, so a distributed file system for the uploads is a cool idea, but the issue with that is with my system is that the decryption server side needs access to the key, obviously. And right now the key is in a central location. To distribute those keys among all of the hosts, that could be an issue. So
this is where blockchain comes in, because if you centralize the key repository, then centralized authority, no authority at all, right? So if your problem is link rather than the storage, you're happy to host. You just want to fly under the radar a little bit. You could use blockchain to distribute the hashes of the files and their location, and have like an onion-like layer of deniability between the hosting service at the end that actually has the image and the front end hash that matches to that hidden service. Something along those lines. I know that's what a lot of these distributed file system kind of solutions are looking into right now. And a lot of it is based, a lot of the driving force behind it is how do we make a paste bin or an imager that can't be shut down.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm currently working on is converting the entire backend of Technic, because right now it's in a very Microsoft stack, ASP.NET 4.6, SQL Server, the whole lot. So I've been converting that into .NET Core and kind of trying to separate concerns to make it a lot easier for other developers, not necessarily with a .NET background, to be able to contribute it, as well as host their own nodes of Technic.
What about the sort of user flagging inappropriate content type scenario? How can that help? Like, I know it's unlikely that a user is going to flag their own content which they've decrypted or they've shared like individually, but is that something that can sort of give you like a due diligence when it comes to the law that says like, look, we take flagged content seriously, but we can't see all our content. We don't have a billion people looking at it, or we don't have some stupid AI that it costs $1 billion to run, scanning it all. So we do our like due diligence the very best we can. And is that enough to help you in with some of that?
Yeah, so the self-reporting aspect for uploads and pastes and all other sorts of content. Right now, we do have basic email and other contact methods to allow that. But as you say, it might not be enough for the new laws or EU or whatever country or government might want to control more content. So that could be one method that helps to show those authorities that I'm trying to do something, and it might be enough for them. But what's scary is that it's so vague in what they want you to do that they could one day say, yeah, that's good enough. But then the next day say, no, that's not good enough. You're now fined $50,000 or euros, whatever.
So I've got a question here for you. I'm reading this directive on copyright in the digital single market, which I think is the proposed law that you're talking about. Is that the right one?
I
know.
think so. Maybe.
Yeah, right. It's a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
But like, if you're doing end-to-end encryption, like,
yes,
how are you as the host? How are you supposed to be able to look into the content to make sure it complies with the law? It's
exactly.
Just, I'm trying to get my head around it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like anywhere from Signal and Wire to any other end-to-end encryption content providers, they don't have access to the data, so they can't scan it. They can't make sure that it meets all the applicable laws of their area. It's impossible.
That's what it seems like. It seems impossible. Like the more I read about it here,
and that won't stop them.
I mean, it's interesting as well thinking about key storage at the moment. I'm assuming that you just have like keys on a box somewhere in a database. Yeah. So like, I guess some other options you could look at, like there's a few examples on like Hackaday and stuff like that where you can use like Arduinos as like the Arduino Duo. I think it's like an 84 megahertz ARM that you can cross compile, embed TLS, which is like Polar SSL or whatever, and you can like basically DIY really quick HSMs, and then you can like write once to those and store your crypto keys in those, and they're like not totally tamper proof but fairly tamper proof, and then you can go like, look, the key's in there, I can't get it out, only the person can get it out. Maybe that could be a different solution to like that centralized blockchain. That's a kind of a complex situation, but like, I mean, it's cheaper than buying a $20,000 HSM, right?
Exactly. But
you don't want anything that can be defeated by the rubber hose attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julian Assange really worked rubber hose.
Well, the idea that if you hit someone with a rubber hose enough times, they'll give you their private key. Pretty effective technique.
Yeah. Also, the first distributed file, the first plausible deniability file system of the same name. But yeah, plausible deniability doesn't work when you get hit with the rubber hose.
Yeah.
So now, Uncle Lee, I had a question about like the scaling challenges you probably have with this, because if you started out as just a service on your own private server, and you're now at the point where you're at now, can you kind of walk us through the process of like what you did to actually scale it up, like to make it what it is?
Yeah. So there definitely were scaling issues. Initially, when it was smaller, it was a PHP backend and a very basic. It did encrypt on the backend back then as well, but it didn't do it in a very efficient manner. It loaded up everything into memory, it encrypted it all, and then saved it straight to disk. Yeah, it was very inefficient and pretty ugly, to be honest. So that was one of the first issues, was once people started uploading multiple things at the same time, multiple people uploading at the same time. Obviously, if all of those are loading all those files into memory completely, that rapidly used memory just like that. So that was one of the first things I needed to fix. So that was also around the time that I moved to a .NET stack. And so I changed it to where now on upload, the upload content now directly streams through a file encryption stream wrapper that encrypts it as it's being written to disk at the first time. So no loading into memory except for the blocks it needs to encrypt the data that is being passed through at that time. But except for that, no other data is being loaded into memory, and it saves all that memory that was being used before. As well, as long with that, obviously disk space became an issue, because with any file upload site, there's a lot of files and a lot of disk space. And one of the things I wanted to keep was the high maximum upload size that was allowed for public users, non-registered users, non-paying users, things like that. So that was one of the main reasons I moved to the dedicated server, first with FlokiNet, and then moving on to LeaseWeb, as well as internet bandwidth. So initially, bandwidth wasn't that difficult. I got a Comcast business line to my apartment. That sufficed for a while. And then I needed a lot more bandwidth to not only allow like Europe, Asia, South America. They had horrible connections to my personal server. So I needed to kind of migrate to a more centrally located, plus a lot closer to an actual hub.
Yeah.
And so that was the other reason I moved out there. And then one of the more recent items was some Japanese and Brazilian people decided that they wanted to use not only my site, but a couple other free upload sites to host their anime episodes for their streaming sites on our services. And so I saw a giant spike in bandwidth usage and things of that nature. So I had to implement some blocking mechanisms to block certain referrals, IP ranges, things like that, as well as implemented a basic max download size before it redirects them to an actual download page, instead of just allowing it a direct download stream of the file directly.
Yeah.
And so that helped curb all of those file streaming issues.
That's crazy though. That's because I one of the things that I was kind of really excited to ask you about was some of the weird stuff that you actually see that I know that you must see on there, and kind of like what your sort of process is for dealing with it, and also just like what is the funniest stuff that you see.
Yeah, so I can say I've seen some stuff. So I try, because obviously I do have access to the entire server. So anything that was encrypted server side, I do have access to the keys, so I can theoretically decrypt the files and view the files directly. I don't do that. If I do need to access a file, it's through the same methods that they do, and it's through the URL. But yeah, so it's like a month ago. I use a Piwik. Have you heard of that? PIWIK. It's
very vulnerable.
Yeah. And so it's internal, and I don't use the JavaScript versions of the API. They make a .NET entry point for it that connects directly to localhost, so I don't have to access it remotely.
So one thing, and you might have been getting to it, but I'm just really curious. You kind of had talked about briefly that your scheme, and then largely it's off limits, except for if you're targeting a specific post or a specific thing that's uploaded, and you do have the ability to look at it, which is not like mind blowing. Pretty much every service provider out there, with exception of very few, can say that they can't look at user submitted content. And so I guess my question to you would be, do you have like an actual roadmap or anything for yourself to make the service better and make it so it is truly private?
Yeah. So that's along the way of basically I kind of have issues figuring out which side I want to go on, because on one side I could force client-side encryption for everyone, in which case I would not have access to any of the keys. Right. Or I could do a sort of middle line where only registered users could upload, and then their keys that the files would be encrypted with would also be encrypted with, say, their password or auth tokens that they generate, things like that.
Right.
In which case I still wouldn't have access to it. But I still want to allow anonymous, non-registered users to be able to access and use the service in a user-friendly way.
So maybe the risk tolerance is probably what's going to drive where you go over the next 3-5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're fighting CP nonstop, I get why you need to have that ability, that flexibility to have that. But if you're generally not, if you're dealing with botnets and stuff like that, it seems like you can cut a pretty easy solution out where, kind of like with nukes, right? You can't set a nuke off just with one key. Multiple people have to turn the key, 2 or 3. And so if there's some kind of investigation that comes down upon you guys and they got pretty good evidence that there's some wrongdoing here, having a 2-3 man system to make sure it's not being abused, that might be something to look into, to kind of keep the integrity there, keep the privacy there, and leave it for the majority of the people to use every day like they are.
As a library, just on that, Red October is available.
Yeah. Wonderful demonstration of what I was just discussing.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the same stuff that I think a lot of people, if they're not already thinking of, if you're running a darknet service, even if it's just for checking recipes for making brownies, whatever you're doing that might in any way possible get on police or radars for investigations, have a plan, like think it out, and make sure that your ass is protected first, and then your users are protected.
Yep. So with your Git type stuff, with the Git hosting, obviously people are adding public keys and stuff, and we saw with like Silk Road, obviously that came up, Frosty, that key. was part of the investigation. I mean, are people just blindly adding, the same key that they used SSH into everything, or are you forcing unique keys, or are you storing them in any special way, or is that just sort of the way, using Git the way that it's sort of meant to be originally used?
So right now, the Git, they can do whatever they want to do it. I'm not forcing them to do to use any sort of standards. But one of the things is that currently it is HTTPS only, in which they aren't allowed to use. It doesn't support SSH keys currently. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about in the move, in migrating it to a different server, kind of distributing the services, because right now it is all very connected. It is all very hard coded together to work together. So that's one of the things I've been working on with the rewrite, is to kind of disassociate each of the services so that they don't rely on each other, so that I can then enable the SSH access and kind of enforce those rules separately from the rest of the service. Because right now, all the services hook into each other very closely, so they kind of force each other to have minimum requirements for what they offer.
Right?
Yeah, as well. So, like for instance, if like Malwarebytes, they block specifically u.technic.io and sometimes by IP. And so if the different services are distributed on different servers across multiple servers, through different IPs, different host names, then these blocking mechanisms wouldn't affect the other services, just specific services. So another thing I was thinking about was to separate this public access to the services and private registered users access, and physically separate those by domain and by IP address, so that if the public abuses the services, it doesn't affect the actual registered members of the service and vice versa.
Right on. When did you start noticing that you had to start paying attention to this stuff?
I've
seen the site, just to give you a little insight. Like I've seen kind of the beginnings of it when you were just setting it up. It was, I gotta be blunt, it was mad slow, but
Yeah.
it worked, right? Like it did exactly what we needed it to do. We didn't have to worry about uploading to ImageUR or Pastebin. Like we had this cool kind of semi-trusted place that we could upload to, and it obviously has grown into the bigger thing that it is today. When did you notice that you had to start thinking about legalities and stuff? Did you actually get a subpoena or anything to that's what spurned this, or can you kind of talk to that a little?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Nice.
So luckily, I have actually not gotten any direct subpoenas yet.
I noticed you used the word direct.
Knock
on wood.
Yeah, we'll knock on wood for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Happening.
And one of the major turning points was, at least for performance-wise, was figuring out and pinpointing the streamer's usage of the site. That was a big performance hit, and once I resolved that released a lot of performance issues, opened it up for a lot of other things, and then as well, before I had background malware scanning during upload, just basic ClamAV stuff. it was just all raw uploads, and so I was getting blacklisted by everything. And so just adding that very basic upload scanning knocked out probably 98% of all the malware being uploaded. And so that was a big turning point. And then recently, about a month ago, I think, I started noticing using Piwik that some onion addresses were accessing specific files a lot. And it was the first time I noticed a lot of the same onion addresses accessing those. And so obviously I was intrigued, so I followed them, and it was not good content. Let's just put it that way. And so I actually got
you blacklisted
contacted by individuals, and
can we just be clear about individuals? Sorry to put you on the spot, but when you say individuals, generally I would assume that to mean law enforcement of some kind.
Not direct law enforcement. Usually third-party companies that deal with just generic inquiries and notices, things like that. So it was
like CERT or something like that.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, so like those third-party DMCA notice companies and all of those different kind of companies. Those were the ones that were contacting me. But what annoyed me was I had set up the abuse email and set up the abuse page for them to specifically contact me, because I was like, fine, contact me about this. But they still went directly to my domain provider, a hosting provider, and the hosting provider then shut down access.
Who is that hosting provider, if you don't mind me asking?
LeaseWeb.
LeaseWeb. Oh yeah, they'll do it pretty quick.
Yeah, and so for this,
without question too, without getting your half of what you're doing to mitigate, which is messed up.
Yeah. So in this specific instance, it was CP, and so they did give me notice, but I'm obviously on the west coast of the US. They are in the Netherlands. And so the time difference, I was asleep when they gave me the notice, and they only allow 1 hour before they shut it down.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. I mean, the question is, did they bring it back up after you remediated?
No.
Well, yeah, so fuck that then.
They waited until 8 a.m. their time the next day. So that was fun.
Well, but as shitty as it is, it sounds like a delay in times caused delay in uptime. But in the end, if you look at it just from the business point of view, they receive this indicator that CP's up on this box. The guy doesn't take the stuff off the box within an hour. They pull plug, go home, little sleepy sleep. In the morning, they see it's gone and they put you back up.
Yeah, so they were very forthcoming and helpful in the sense that they didn't screw me over.
Did you end up staying with them after that?
Yeah, I'm still with them.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that right there speaks volumes.
This was really the only air quote issue I've had with them, but
the entire time. Wow, that's great, man. Good luck.
Yeah.
I mean,
because they've had abuse reports before, because obviously there's been malware abuse reports and copyright reports, but they've talked with me and they've worked with me on timelines with that and things like that.
I can never have focus of this window when I'm going to hit my mic. Have you explored looking into like getting control over your IP space? I know you might only have one or two, so that kind of makes it harder. But a lot of these VPS providers these days, especially, I want to say Flocky does it. They'll give you what's essentially the whois over the IP space. So if somebody whois your server, instead of it coming back to Flocky or LeaseWeb, it comes back to you. so you're the first line of defense for receiving all these complaints. And I guess my closer to that is if you haven't done it yet, that's something I would strongly recommend.
Yeah, that's something I'll look into. One of the major factors into all the decisions I've been making is cost. So right now I run it purely as a hobby, supported by my regular day job and donations. And
so one of the laws.
Yeah. So one of the things I did to help kind of try and bring in some revenue to keep it going without me needing to push it along was the premium accounts. That sort of helped. But yeah, so that's another reason why I moved to LeaseWeb was mainly cost. But along with the distributed system, with moving towards allowing others to host specific nodes of the Technic service, that would reduce the need of me to physically host things and to supply the programming, supply the infrastructure for others to actually host the content and things like that.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, as good of an idea as what you're just saying is, that was really kind of the last thing that you could do is get spread, right? Like spread out to different areas, specifically areas that aren't MLAT friendly. Let's just be blunt about it. Not MLAT friendly, not Interpol friendly areas for the ultimate protection. But the Cloud Act that was just signed within the past year really kind of just takes that and just throws it right in the trash.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that any of the Five Eyes is allowed to hack, do offensive attacks against anything they need to justify their end goals. And I don't know, we're living in kind of weird times. It seems like there's a push to either onion land or a push to really start paying our lawyers much better and getting ahead of the issues before they start.
Exactly. What I think is about is pretty messed up is that you're doing this with the best intention, right?
Yes.
And while you've got the best intention to provide this service there's obviously a gap. And because if you look at the other options of the major parties like GitHub, Imager, like Reddit, whatever, wherever you're hosting Pastebin, they're not how did they become so legitimized and accepted, and they're not getting shut down and having to deal with moving servers and stuff like that, when essentially you're really providing the same thing with a little bit extra level of security, but all of a sudden the internet is abusing you as such. You know what I mean? Like they're abusing your kindness and your efforts, that you now have to have all these problems. It's like, it sort of seems ass backwards to me. Yeah, but I tend to think of it as they went through these growing pains as well, and they just were able to get the infrastructure, get the support needed to initially probably manually vet a lot of these things and forego some of the privacy that they initially wanted, and to basically forego a lot of the initial values that they had and as a service. And so with that, they were able to grow and handle a lot of these situations because they didn't have not handcuffs, but these moral issues holding them back from doing what needed to be done in order to mitigate these issues.
So just to kind of recap that line of thinking, that's specifically for what property are we talking about?
Anywhere from Reddit to GitHub to any of those.
So from my perspective, I've seen them grow from an order of compliance and having their legal defense as their user base grew. And it kind of seems very similar to what you're doing. You seem to actually be taking an approach of doing it maybe quicker than you needed to, which I fully applaud. I mean, that's honestly, if you're not building a security tool, or if you're not building a tool with security built into it already, you're already behind the game, and then you're bolting shit on to try and make it secure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely much better that you're doing it this way. I got to be honest, Technic.io has always been one place that I'm like, yeah, I'll click that link someday in a BM.
Hey,
But
I'll give it a shot. If you were given the opportunity to partner with somebody like GitLab to then or like Pastebin or whoever who has these legal things in place to have your technology, and whether I don't know what kind of deal it would be, but say that you could get your technology with somebody who's got that legal backing, or maybe they've got that more advanced way of scanning for this inappropriate content. Would you consider partnering with one of these larger sort of people, or is this something that you want to keep like independent?
That's a good question. I'm not sure right now. I would love to be able to be at the point where the service does not rely on me to run it, where it is self-sustaining. There might be a host of people that are running it together, but it does not rely on me specifically. And regarding to other companies, other organizations, not necessarily acquiring it, but maybe partnering it, investing into it,
integrating with it. I mean,
yeah.
look at Slack, right? Like Slack hasn't gotten bought by anybody, but Slack is damn well used by half the valley.
That's true. Yeah. And so things like that, I would be open to something where it would be maybe a partnership or a utilizing each other's technologies or something of that nature, not necessarily being bought out or acquired by another company and incorporated directly into only their technology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would expect people are, I mean, as it continues to grow, I'm sure you got metrics too that shows that it's been growing.
Yeah.
Excuse me for all the burping. But as it continues to grow, you're gonna start getting those opportunities to integrate, and even if it's just in the sense that you're providing a service or a custom version of Technique that's reskinned for, I'm just throwing the name out, like ThugCrowd or Stacksmash, any of that. That's probably on its way for you, roadmap wise, right?
Yes.
Working to get that packaged, I guess, and gaining trust through security safeguards and all that stuff. It seems like the next logical step for you, man. This is good stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm almost done with the rewrite, and part of the rewrite is pulling out the authentication to identity server, so that basically I wanted an easy way for if someone wanted to host their own instance, but also tap into the user database, so that they could share user access between the two nodes. Then now it allow that, as well as storing credentials and things of that nature for the user database on a completely different system as the rest of the services.
It'd be cool to chat about this offline. I like that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I like how it's matured though. I gotta say, like,
thanks.
I'm pretty sure Nux signed me onto it or got me onto it years ago, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. But
Yeah, I shilled the fuck out of this shit.
you did. You shilled the hell out of it. You shucked and jived, and you got our attention. But here I'm looking at it like in 4th of July weekend, weekday, I guess. Damn it! But it's
It is a
2018, and Technique looking pretty badass.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate you coming on, man.
I wanted to kind of circle back to the thing that I had asked a little bit earlier of what's the craziest or funniest things you've seen on your site. So you can
So the craziest things, it doesn't get that crazy. Besides the CP and all that nonsense, just some like gore stuff and stuff of that nature. Yeah.
And
Other than-
script kiddies uploading botnets and shit.
Yeah, a lot of those. And there's this one Git repo that I host, SML loader, SM loader. Yeah, basically software that allows people to download free music somewhere. I don't know. But for some odd reason, the users love to think that because it's hosted on Technic, that Technic is the developer of that said software. And so I keep getting support tickets and support questions about why isn't this working? Or how do I do this? How do I do that? And I have to redirect them and say, yeah, that's not ours. Go away.
That's funny. You should give them, yeah, depending on how much of a target you want to put on yourself, you should give them advice. Like, well, you just type space, semicolon, and RM. Insert pointers and just wipe your drive.
And then with having a website with emails on the website itself that comes along with all sorts of spam. And for some odd reason, all the spam I get is about these Chinese manufacturers thanking me for requesting demos of their candles and shit like that.
Yeah, you probably actually are pretty close to a few manufacturing firms over there. I wouldn't doubt that for a second.
You should get some candles.
But
they
aren't asking for anything. They're not like saying, hey, thank you, subscribe here, or here's a payload, here's whatever. It's just raw text saying, hey.
Want some candles?
Yeah.
There's like a lot of companies called Technic, right? So I wouldn't doubt that.
That's true.
Manufacturing ones over in Japan. I have a similar case with my email. I get congratulated all the times for all these breakthroughs I'm making with batteries and shit. And I'm like, well, thank you. You know, it took a lot of hard work. Like, I just accept it as my praise. I don't give it away. I'm like, thank you. That took a lot of work.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing
Yeah.
stories. Because I feel like it's something that people kind of take for granted that there's sites like yours. I mean, there's your site, there's the paste bins and all that of stuff, but there's a lot of these awesome service websites that people don't really get to hear from like who actually runs it. You know, it's kind of like a faceless entity where they can just dump all their weird, drama and anime porn, and like they don't really think of it as actually people who are behind it, like thinking about like the future of it and like what new features to add and like how to actually manage it. So it's really cool to hear all this stuff from as a developer, as somebody who does this kind of stuff, like infrastructure stuff professionally. It's cool to see how it can grow from something that's so like homegrown, just a couple people, to something that is very widely used and is known by everybody, from people just trying to use your services for whatever purposes to just AV vendors and people like that who Chinese manufacturers. So it's definitely really cool to see that kind of growth happen.
I think it's also pretty cool to hear the troubles that he's going through, and I think it goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it. If you got stuff that you're sharing that is not legal, especially just fucked up stuff, keep it away from the small firms, man. You're only gonna either make them go away because they get scared by law enforcement, or law enforcement comes down on them, and then they fucking go to jail. It just
Or at the very least, just use the end-to-end encryption and just keep it off my server so I can't access it.
Yeah, you're in the end going to stifle something that could be cool. There's plenty of different alternatives out there to spread whatever kind of file you want, whether it's an MP3 or whatever. Don't fuck around with the smaller sites. It doesn't protect you at all. It makes it worse for your protection, in fact. Because they may not be all as cool as our homie is tonight. They may just drop your dime like auto forward to FBI. You don't know. So
exactly.
yeah, don't mess with the small guys. Leave it that to Mega or whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, yeah. Does anybody have any other questions for Uncle D here? There's a lot of people on stream, but we've kind of just been talking amongst us.
But he's so interesting, and I just want to learn more.
Aw, shucks.
And I think actually one of the last questions, I think, or a question I meant to ask about from Jin, who had to leave, he asked, why did you pick Microsoft over, like, or Microsoft Stack in general, and why not use any, like, Nix stuff?
Yeah. So I worked day to day in a very Microsoft heavy stack, full .NET, Windows Server, Azure, the whole shebang. And so obviously when I first rewrote Technic from PHP, I wrote it into something I was familiar with, learning about, which was .NET. And I started working on that. It grew from that. I love C#, and so I just grew it from that. And because .NET Framework requires Windows to run well,
I know.
I had to run it on Windows Server. And since I still had and found a education email address, I was able to get it for free. So the cost was not an issue.
Hook it up.
And same with SQL Server as well.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's why I went with the Microsoft stack that it's currently running on. And with the rewrite, I wanted to make it so that it didn't require the Microsoft stack anymore. And so I have it where now it runs on whatever .NET Core runs on, which is a whole host of Linux OSs and Mac OS and some. I think it's on ARM now and whatever. And so hopefully with the separation of concerns between the different services, I will be able to move it to a Linux host, not only to get away from Windows and its telemetry, but also one of the big screaming points from users is trust, because they feel that running it on Windows Server doesn't necessarily reflect what the service is trying to provide with animosity and privacy and things like that. So while I am trying to provide all that with Windows, it's just another layer of trust for the end user.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat just ignorance from their angle too. I mean, you can totally make a sticker box on Windows.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah, I'm glad.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, man, I'm taking a look over your the FAQ page, basically, just the real-time server usage, site statistics, transactions, takedowns is literally listed right there. Like it's fucking clear as day what takedowns he's doing. So I like that. I think that's something that unfortunately won't scale, but for right now, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the takedown section actually does scale pretty well because it's all automated.
Really?
For the most part. But the part that doesn't scale is the donation page and transactions pages, because right now all those are manually entered. And yeah, that's a whole issue.
Is this a project that other people can contribute on, or are you doing it solo for now?
Yeah. I have it hosted both on GitHub as well as TechnicGit, because some people might not be on one or the other. I can link it in the Twitch chat right now.
Do you guys have a like a Discord or like a Slack that you hang out on? Developers hang out on?
So I usually hang out on Ryzon IRC. There's a Technic channel on there that I'm in, as well as XMPP Land. I'm in there now for some odd reason. Thanks, Nux. Yeah, you can contact me by email. If you get close enough, you might get my phone number. So who knows?
Yeah. Hey, what's your domain? What's the domain?
Yeah, throw it out there.
So I just sent out the link to the source. And if you want to look at my current project, the .NET Core stuff, that's on Branch Core. And so you'll be able to follow along with that. Most of it works right now, except the auth portion. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome.
Really good stuff, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can always, if you somehow miss anything that he said, you can always us and we can help you get in contact.
I actually got a really big question for you. Since you're doing this, I gotta assume that you know other people that are doing similar things where they're building projects and they're just right now getting off the ground, but they're only a few inches off the ground. If you want to throw anybody's name our way, that we should chat with about how they're doing their ops, that I think is one of the most inspiring things we could do on the show, is kind of show the growing pains of going from running a one server thing in your basement to running something decently stable right now.
Yeah, I can get a list of people. Have you heard of Pomf.se? I think it was.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of domain names for them. But basically, from that spurred 20 different versions of Pomf. And so from there, it was basically a bunch of us almost racing against each other, trying, and that helped a lot spur the want to improve the service even more, because you had others also improving the service, and so you obviously wanted to improve yours along with them.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a core group that you guys all were inspired by and made movement, if you guys all want to jump on and kind of feed off each other through a convo, I think we could definitely do that again. More what?
Wow.
Stop talking what?
Stop blocking Tor.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that too. Yeah, you're blocking Tor.
He has to.
Yeah, that is a hopefully short-term measure against the CP abuse.
Well, so yeah, and so this, if you're not already doing it, this is something that deserves a weekly kind of get together with your other makers and builders, because there are options out there to take care of this very easily. I mean, just hash tables to check.
Or you can have it so that when Morb goes on that he can get on from his exit node.
Stop fingerprinting me, bro.
No, we would only block Morb, actually. Everybody else is allowed through. I love you, Morb. I'm kidding.
It's all good.
I'm blocked on your sites now, aren't I?
Well, we got to get offline here in a second, but I just want to thank Uncle D for coming on, everybody for coming into the chat here. Sorry, Aspect from Apophis Squad that you couldn't get on and have your mic, but maybe next week. So we'll talk to you soon. Everybody else, thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you Sunday where we can talk more on our stream.
Sounds good. Shut the fuck up and get a lawyer.